So we were thinking about what we wanted to build up at this site to connect local people and tourists who are visiting the site. And we started discussing kind of what common activities can bring people together. So things like play and food in particular kept coming up. So we started thinking about kind of how we could, or what kind of things we could build that could facilitate cooking and also gathering around a cooking space. We were thinking about a kitchen, but the idea of an outdoor kitchen or a grill was coming up as a more kind of communal cooking area where naturally people gather around, cook together. It can kind of be more open, so there's more space for conversation and more people to be involved, which is why the grill kind of kept coming up as something that we could build. What did you think? Why did the grill? Why did you want to go with the grill?
Yeah, I think you have a very good point there, and it's something with these non-verbal languages that is quite important, and I think that was one of the ideas we had when we were thinking about the grill, that different cultures could come around over food and we could learn from each other, and also build it together, where we sort of share the experience with building together, and then we can use it to eat together as well and learn from that.
Yeah, I think there was initially this sort of prompt from PRAKSIS and from Samong Haven that was like, hey, we want people to build a bathroom and a kitchen because these are things that the site needs. And it was like looking also at this approach to building that is very like, in response to these like basic necessities first. So it's like, okay, what you're going to build something, what's the very first thing you need if you're going to build anything else? You need some shade because we're in Bali. So you have a limasan, you got shade. And it's like, okay, we want people to use this space. What do you need? You need a bathroom. And then kind of like folding out from there. So this idea of the bathroom, the kitchen, and the shade structure, the limasan, as kind of like primary for anything to happen here. So yeah, we came into it, and Charlotte, Nicholas, and Don were kind of like, okay, these are the parameters we're working with. And then in thinking about the kitchen and how that might function in this space, it got pretty stripped back pretty fast, and it was kind of like, okay, so we have a counter, we have a sink, we're going to do maybe a wastewater system, so what does that look like? How does that link with the bathroom? But then having these structures as like, okay, what infrastructure do people need to gather around? People need to wash things, people need to have a surface to prep things on or share things over. But as the kitchen became more and more stripped back, there was this conversation of where does the cooktop go? Is it interior? Is it exterior? And then all these questions about like, where does the smoke go? Do we have to redesign the roof of the limasan? Like, how does that factor into all of this? Is it going to be sort of a kitchen that you only make tea on or coffee or things that are not so oily or so smoky? And then how do you regulate that? If it's a community space that has open access, how do you then sort of stipulate what can be done on what infrastructure? And so in that conversation also, I think the grill kind of moved out of the limasan in ways to like rope it into this space. So it was like, okay, if we have an interior counter and sink and have an exterior grill, how can those things be in conversation? And then if you have an exterior grill, what else does that imply about the space around it? How can that be activated? How can you kind of like start to think about the space more broadly and how it can all kind of fit together and what our priorities are and what we want to facilitate?
Yeah, and in addition to the grill, we have also been working with the whole area around it, and we have thought about this patio, which are connected to the limasan, and you do have like this visual connection between the limasan and the grill area, and we have been working with the slope in the landscape to gradually step the way up and also create space to sit around and preserving all the natural elements that is already here. So for example, the tree is a natural shade provider, and we didn't move any stones on the site in order to have some places for seating around the grill. That sort of was there naturally from the start.
Yeah, I really loved that when Andy Rahman joined us. He kind of pointed out, yeah, like you say, the tree and the rock and the things that were already there, and to really incorporate that into our design. It kind of, yeah, was something that maybe, well, I was seeing as a bit like in the way rather than seeing the benefits of it. So when he said it, it was like so obvious, and then yeah, it's really kind of made the whole design come together and fit into the natural landscape. But I was also thinking that having the limitations of the brick, so we'd already ordered some bricks to use. We had like one whole size brick and one, we expected it to be a half size brick, but when it came it was over half size. So in some ways that was difficult, but it also like really informed the design. I think if we hadn't have already had the material there to work with, we probably wouldn't have ended up with this design. And I really like, yeah, that process, kind of having the object and working with it. And we didn't necessarily cut any of the bricks. Now we're still talking about whether we cut off some of the bits sticking out or whether that actually adds to the design. Yeah, so I think that, and then also just building a very simple stove. So we took the idea of the rocket stove as like a really simple structure that we could build, make fire. It's also something that's used in houses in Bali a lot. So when we went to visit people here, we saw them cooking on the ground, sitting down with the fire and cooking everything, all the meals like through fire. So we didn't want to kind of take away from that, and we thought that's also a great learning opportunity for people coming to visit the site, for tourists. Okay, this is how we cook, and we contemplated the height of the grill. Should we have it, you know, a standing height as we maybe are more comfortable with, or should we have it a lower height as people here are more comfortable with?
Yeah, well, that was also sort of when you entered into the conversation, because you got here a bit later. And so we'd already kind of designed this thing, and we were like, let's mock it up on site. We had these little tiny bricks that Paco brought, and we were making little models of it back at our hotel where we're staying. And we, like, you know, had all these design plans, and here was going to have like a chute, and here there was going to be whatever and a pattern. And then we decided to come up here and just build it and see what happened, and, you know, like kind of figure it out on site. And then you got here and you were like, guys, that's way too high. It's a Western grill, but this is not a Western context. And so maybe you want to talk a little bit about the modifications that came in sort of as you arrived too, because it changed quite a bit then.
Yeah, it did. I think I came more as a support at the end, last minute. Yeah, but I think for me it was just like, yeah, thinking about the landscape and how people use things here. And just, yeah, kind of remind me of this local thing. I know this context, it would be nice to have it really nice and high, it makes sense, but then it would be more fuel. So then, like, within equal just the cutting wood, branches, or, you know, a lot of wood. So it's just my additions to think about, you know, the things about, like, wind or the spirit in the space. How do people live and how does it the locals who it's still going to work with it. So it's very open.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was always sort of a driving thing, is that our design approach was very much for the local community, which this is a space that will serve the local community and a tourist community. But I think that the way that we were approaching this was that, like, the local experience came first, and then the tourists can, you know, adapt to that, figure out how that factors into whatever else the space is, but like trying to put that as primary, that like this is a community gathering space that hopefully will make local people feel comfortable, want to use it, and then what design infrastructures and like structural design elements need to be factored in to make it accessible in that way. First.
I think another interesting discussion we have had is like the idea of time in the structure, and whether we should build something permanent or temporary. And Tonga had a really good addition while we were trying to work with this sustainable mortar, trying to use as little cement as possible. So yeah, you had quite good knowledge from previous experiences of how we could bind the bricks together with the materials from the site.
Yeah, we could clay, work with clay a lot there and from, so it felt the need to think about the materials and looking at the ethos.
Where here, just wasp on streaming in here too.
I want to be there. So yeah.
The wasp.
thinking to add clay to the conversation and having less concrete.
Yeah, which I mean is so relevant to everything we've been talking about, because initially we came here and we were like, no mortar, we're going to use the traditional Balinese bricks that don't require it. It's going to be more ecological. It's going to get around this concrete problem. And then as we're learning throughout the way, we try making earth blocks and try making other kinds of solutions, and always cement comes in at some point. Like, people have forgotten how to do anything without cement.
Yeah.
So then for you to come in and be like, hey, actually I have a method, there's no cement, like this is how you do it, and actually like run workshops and teach people, and we could process the clay ourselves and do all of that was really, really cool to like at the end have this kind of solution that we were looking for from the beginning.
And I think the idea that the mortar doesn't last forever is also a good thing, because then you can come together and rebuild the structure, or you can change it according to different needs in the future.
Yeah.
So it's quite flexible as well in a way.
Yeah, I thought that was actually like, to see that as a positive is a great change of perspective, because like, yeah, maybe in 2 years the grill doesn't function so well there, and someone was saying also this is how skills are passed on to next generation, how you remind yourself to do it again, also retaining the knowledge. So seeing the kind of not lasting forever as a positive thing was like a really, I kind of knew it in theory, but I think when you arrived, Tonga, you had done it practically, and you'd built houses from clay and unfired bricks, like cob and adobe in Zambia. So it was like amazing to have the practical experience as well, and that really added to
But even happy to always share. I think it was important, and I like to leave the knowledge, especially like with locals. You guys are going to your spaces, but important that we'll think about clay in a different way as well. I think about clay has different continents, so it's all different from different places.
Yeah, I think one of my main takeaways from the mortar process that we were doing with you is, I think there's this idea of efficiency where you want everything to be as efficient as possible, because there's money involved, you got to pay people, you got to go fast. And so you end up with these solutions that are maybe not as good, but they're quicker. Whereas this process is quite slow. We spent a long time over the wheelbarrow sort of sifting the clay, and you got to go collect the clay, and then you got to break up the coconut. Everything is really labor intensive. But in those moments, there's also like really beautiful community exchange. Like to sit around the wheelbarrow sifting clay with you guys was a really nice time to like chat. And so I feel like that's also what's lost in these processes that become more efficient and more capitalistic and like operate on this metric, is you lose these opportunities to like sit with people and do a thing and chat.
just the joy